Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in. Wherever you are in this world, I want you to know that I'm very grateful that you are dedicating time to my podcast. I realize that every day you have a choice, and there are definitely many things you have to do every day. So if you decided to tune into my podcast for a few minutes, then I want you to know that I'm super appreciative. Thank you. And welcome to episode 24. Consuming or creating. And speaking of choices, you have many options with each day that starts. Most likely, a large portion of your day is filled with obligations. Things that you just have to do. And if you were either lucky or maybe very deliberate in your choice of work, then you found something that feels less like a duty and more like fun. But then you also have some free time where you can choose your activities. I think everyone has a little bit of free time. Some people have free time all day. So I see each day consisting of 3 major activities. And they are consuming, learning, and creating. So when I think back of my childhood, which I spent mostly with my grandparents, I recall that my grandfather spent the majority of the day creating. He was a miller by profession, and in his free time he built things in his workshop, or he improved the house that we lived in. I have memories from him pouring concrete to pave the driveway, making a bookshelf for me out of wood, and repairing his old motorcycle. My grandmother spent a lot of time either in the garden or in the kitchen, and the results of her creations were always appealing to the senses. Eyes, nose, mouth. Everything she did was beautiful. And to my grandfather's despair, I was more of a consumer. I loved consuming the delectable dishes my grandmother created. I liked watching certain shows on TV. You see, my grandparents only turned on the TV at night for about 2 hours, and sometimes less, because they often fell asleep in front of it, exhausted from their hard work. Of course, back then I didn't see their efforts as creation. To me, it was hard work. And that was something I wanted to stay away from as much as possible. The modernization of our world brought more of everything. More products and services for everyone's consumption and enjoyment. And this in turn freed up time. Think car wash, grocery stores in closer proximity. Or even as a delivery. Think frozen meals, washing machines, digital cameras, streaming media, and last but not least, the internet. Think about all the time just these few examples save you any given week. And sadly, we have flipped from a society that creates to live happily to one that sees a fulfilled life in increased consumption. Our basic human needs have not changed much over the centuries if you think about it. We all need shelter, food, some fellow human beings, and emotional and intellectual stimulation and fulfillment. But with an overabundance of products and services, and the creativity of companies that try to sell them to us through every imaginable channel, we are constantly confronted with the option to consume. So yesterday evening I went for a walk. There's a pastry shop near my house that closes, I think, at 6 on weekends. And suddenly I saw myself looking at full shelves of delicious looking treats at 5:30 p.m., even considering them. And then I remembered my childhood. We had a bakery in town that closed early on Saturdays, and if you didn't show up by mid-morning, their shelves might be empty. And this was the same with other things. There's always a limited supply, and there was always that chance that you might not get what you really want. Today, everything you can think of is always available. If your favorite Chinese restaurant is already closed at 10 p.m. when it occurs to you to eat, then you just drive across town and find one that's still open. I remember weekends that I spent going out or at home watching movies, eating, sleeping, maybe a few minor chores, and that was it. After such weekends, I often felt empty and unproductive. A gnawing dissatisfaction took hold of me. When I expressed this to others, maybe co-workers, they would always respond with things like, "Oh, that's just you being German. It's the guilt in you that you didn't do anything." Or they told me that those are what weekends for, to have fun, to do nothing. And I could never really get my head around that. And when I expressed this to closer friends, they would tell me that they sometimes feel the same. You see, I believe we are all meant to create. Some create with their body, others with their brains and their mind. But we are all endowed with gifts, things we're good at, that come easy to us, things that we're passionate about. And the reason that we have these gifts is so we can contribute to not only our own survival and advancement, but also that of our community, the society as a whole, and ultimately that of the human race. I don't care what people say, but I know with certainty that we did not go through such a painful process of maturing in our mother's womb for 9 months, and then being born under such painful circumstances, to then spend the majority of our lives watching television. Just look at all the mental illness in the world, anxiety, depression, fear, and so many other issues that people carry around, and compare that to the time that you planted some flowers, you took a jewelry class, you painted your room, you picked berries in a field, and how fulfilling that felt. Think of the last time you made a list of something, anything. The simple act of doing something that we believe to add value to our lives or the lives of others is fulfilling and brings contentment. You can't deny that. I'm not suggesting to go back to the old days and grow all our own vegetables and raise animals for consumption. But I believe we need to find a balance between consuming time and creating time. And I want to add one more element in there, which is learning time. I see learning time as in somewhere in between. Learning is consuming of knowledge that others created, but it's that knowledge that you need to create something of your own. It's the bridge between consuming and creating. And that's the goal of schooling, that you learn skills that you can apply in life. The problem is that schooling mostly gives us the basics, and it's then up to us to expand the knowledge into the direction that we feel drawn to. And sometimes that direction is not clear right away, or changes a few times, but acquiring new knowledge will help you discover your passion, which one day you may apply to create something for others. And that knowledge doesn't have to come from formal schooling. Life itself is a good teacher. Now, there are people that also spend all day learning and never apply their knowledge anywhere. And that's not balance either. So the goal, again, is to find your balance. Catching up on your favorite Netflix show is consuming. Posting comments all day long on social media is not really creating. It's more like reacting. And if you create all day at work but you don't find it enjoying, then look for a change. Your creation should give you joy and challenge you. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You get better the more you do. And to help get you inspired, here's a question that you should ask yourself from time to time. And that is, what do I want the world to remember of me? And think of the world in broader sense. Your children, maybe. And if you don't have children or never want to have children, maybe other people. How do you want to be remembered? Think of a balance. We all need some consuming time. I mean, eating is consuming, right? We need it. but also how can you contribute by creating something? So I want to end with a quote by a writer I recently discovered. His name is Mohsin Hamid, and I've read a couple books, but this quote is from a book called How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia, and I think it's very appropriate for what we've talked about today. We are all refugees from our childhoods, and so we turn, among other things, to stories. To write a story, to read a story, is to be a refugee from the state of refugees. Writers and readers seek a solution to the problem that time passes, that those who have gone are gone, and those who will go, which is to say every one of us, will go. For there was a moment when anything was possible, and there will be a moment when nothing is possible. But in between, we can create. Which to me is to say, we have a very limited time. Use that time wisely and create something amazing. With much love. Until next time.